Okay, we are now recording on the Canon SL2, which is an APS-C sensor, and I have the cameras basically on top of each other. So the top one is right here, that is the SL2, and this one right here is the Sony A7C. So both of these are on the kit lens, so the Canon is on an EFS 18 to 55 millimeter. That's a f4 to 5.6 image stabilized STM lens. And below here on the Sony A7C, we have the kit lens that is a Sony FE lens, FE mount lens, and it goes from a 4.0 to a 5.6, and it's 28 to 60. So the differences that we have here are really around one's an APS-C sensor and one's a full frame.
So a few differences for these two cameras. When we're talking about the Canon SL2, we have a 24.2 megapixel sensor, and we can shoot up to 1080p at 60 frames per second. This camera also has dual pixel autofocus, 9 autofocus points, and has the ISO range of 100 to 25,600. It also has a 3-inch flippy screen and can shoot 5 frames per second. Versus the Sony A7C, we also have a 24.2 megapixel sensor with 693 autofocus points, eye detect autofocus, and can shoot up to 10 frames per second, and ISO ranges from 50 to 204,800, and you can shoot up to 4K 30 frames per second. So looking at the footage back and forth between these two, on the left you can see really no grain to mention, and these cameras are both in auto mode, so we're just letting the cameras make the decisions on what the ISO shutter speed and what the aperture should be as well. So when we're looking at these two here, we can see a lot of grain in the right, and really what this is that the ISO is being pumped up on the Canon SL2 to accommodate for the somewhat poor lighting conditions. We can see a difference here when we switch over to the 50 millimeters when they're at f1.8 because that'll let in a bit more light. But looking at this, you can definitely see a lot more grain on the SL2. So that is definitely what I would say is the major difference here. And when we're looking at the color science, you can definitely see a little bit warmer on the Canon SL2, and that's one of the things that also you can see a difference here. You can see that the exposure, you can see a little bit better on the A7C, you can see a bit sharper as well on the A7C as well. And the color science is somewhat close, but as I mentioned, it's a little bit warmer on the SL2. Okay, so let's move over to the 50 millimeter lenses, which are both at f1.8. So as you can see now on the right side with the Canon, you can see a lot less noise. There still is noise, but you can see a lot less of it. And here you can definitely see a little bit more of a difference of the SL2 being a little bit softer. You can see it in my forehead there. There's a little wrinkle across my forehead, and you can see a lot more of the skin on the left on the A7C. That's probably the biggest difference that you can see here with the 1.8 lenses. Now, this again is very subjective. You may like the left side, you may like the right side, and the price differences are quite large. So I would say if you do like the APS-C setup, then definitely go for that. You can definitely still get good shots, and you can definitely supplement that with lighting as well. So with this said, this is just showing you the differences that you can see with the full frame versus the APS-C sensor. So one thing to note is that a full frame, you'll get better performance in low light, and here is a picture of a glass in front of a Christmas tree. And one thing that you'll notice here is that it's sort of like an LED panel versus an OLED panel. The left you can see the A7C picture where you get blacks versus the right, you get a bit of a different look, but you do get some nice bokeh balls, versus the left, you get a little bit more oval shapes. But again, looking at this, which one do you like better? I see a little bit of grain on the right side, but overall the pictures look pretty good. I think on the left we have a little bit more sharper on the glass, and I think on the right side it's a little bit less sharp here. But again, different pictures, a little bit different focal lengths with the 50mm f1.8s. Okay, now switching over to the kit lenses, we get a little bit different results. On the left side here we have the Canon SL2, and on the right side we have the Sony A7C. So can you tell a big difference? When I'm looking at this, again, I still see some grain on the left side for the SL2. The Sony A7C again looks a little bit clearer, but again here it kind of looks like a little bit of face smoothing is being done by the A7C as well. But overall, you can see again there's a little bit more of a color science difference where the SL2 on the left is warmer and on the right is a little bit cooler. So yeah, what are your thoughts? You can see the bokeh on the right side again is a little bit more, and on the left side it's a little bit less. And again, these are with the kit lenses, so that's probably the major difference you would see here, both in full auto mode. Again, with the kit lens, you can see on the left side the SL2, still some grain, and I think again very, very warm. You can see on the right, the Sony A7C definitely has the color of my feet a bit better. The left is really just way too warm for my liking and it's just not true to life. And I think also looking at the couch, you can see the colors on the couch on the A7C on the right are definitely more true to actually what it looks like in real life. And yeah, that's where you can see the major difference here in this photo. Now we're switching back to the 50mm lenses with the f1.8. As you can see, the trend still really remains the same here. You can see on the left side here with the A7C, no grain, and you can see a lot of the colored details, and again, a little bit cooler. On the right, again, a little bit more grain, a little bit warmer, but you can still see some of the details that you would want to see. Now, again, this is pulling in raw files into a video file, which may or may not be helpful to you. So if you're interested, let me know if you want the raw files to play around with. I can send you those as well. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on the A7C versus SL2 or full frame versus APS-C. To me, full frame is looking like the way to go, especially when you're talking about low light. If you're in really good lighting conditions, then you may not have to spring for a full frame camera. But yeah, in my conditions with some of the really terrible lighting situations that I get into, full frame is definitely the way to go for me. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.